What mattered was that the Americans succeeded, and victory should come to what Lafayette considered the brightest beacon of freedom in the world. Back in America, Lafayette was once again under the American command. Welcomed back by Washington, Lafayette served as an intermediary between the newly arrived French forces stationed in Newport, Rhode Island, and the Americans. During Lafayette's absence, the war had shifted south to the southern colonies of Georgia and South Carolina. Led by Lord Cornwallis, British forces had captured the majority of the population centers in the two states. Only through a long, protracted guerrilla warfare campaign were the two states able to maintain some American control. Meanwhile, in the New York area, Washington had his armies encamped surrounding New York, waiting for the opportune moment to strike George Clinton's forces in New York City. Washington hoped that with the arrival of the French, a victory would be soon forthcoming. However, attacking New York was low on the priorities of the French, who saw the city as too well guarded. Instead, Lafayette and the French fleet sailed towards the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia to disrupt the British operations in the area. The American turncoat Benedict Arnold had launched an invasion of the region and had succeeded in driving many Virginian planters off their plantations. Lafayette arrived in late 1780 and began leading local American forces against the better supplied and armed British army. Though constantly undersupplied, Lafayette proved to be a talented general playing a constant game of cat and mouse with the larger British forces. Soon, Arnold's forces were joined by Lord Cornwallis's bedraggled army, who had been pursuing Nathaniel Greene's Continental soldiers. By early summer of 1781, Cornwallis and his troops had begun to fortify Yorktown, a deep-water port where larger naval vessels could dock, at the orders of his commanding officer George Clinton. Sensing a prime opportunity, American and French leaders marched troops from New York and sent a naval squadron from the Caribbean, effectively trapping Lord Cornwallis and over 7,000 British troops. The siege of Yorktown had begun. On September 28th, Washington and his command of nearly 19,000 men began moving the siege lines closer to the British fortifications. Over the course of the next week, Washington's army constricted the British forces until on October 6, 1781, the Americans opened the first parallel, or trench, that would allow the Americans and French to bombard the British defenses with cannon fire. By October 9th, the American and French cannons were in position and opened fire on Yorktown. The bombardment continued until the night of October 14th, when the American and French forces launched attacks on the British outer defenses. The attacks were successful and further weakened the British. Artillery bombardment continued for 8 more days until on October 17th, 1781, Lord Cornwallis surrendered. Lafayette likely felt intense satisfaction at seeing his long-hated enemies subdued by the combined forces of America and France.